Economy remains the top issue for voters. A new Associated Press NORC poll revealing 53% say our nation's economy is in very poor or somewhat poor conditions. A stunning 68% of voters reveal they believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. The same poll shows voters are split on who to trust more on economic issues. Trump polls with more trust on the cost of groceries and gasoline. Harris slightly ahead on housing costs and taxes on the middle class. New CNBC analysis reveals Trump's sweeping tax reforms could make 93 million Americans either totally or partially exempt from income taxes. As experts warn, Harris's death tax or estate tax could impact more than just the ultra-wealthy and harm family-owned businesses. Lots of commentary here on a very different agenda, depending on who we're talking about. Michael Lee, your reaction.
Yeah, so this AP poll, they didn't release the crosstabs because I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the headline. And so whenever you don't release the crosstabs, you're generally trying to hide something. Donald Trump is winning double digits on inflation and the economy. Okay, those are separate issues. That's basically every other pollster except for this poll. And voters trust him way more on the economy. And I think the other kind of misnomer out there is that this race is somehow close. Donald Trump has moved 7.7% from this exact day in the Real Clear Politics moving average of the polls. Of course, he lost the popular vote in the last election, but just about 4%. Okay, he is looking like he is en route to a 2 to 4 point popular vote victory, which would be north of 320 electoral college votes. And it's because he is winning on these top three issues of inflation, the economy, and immigration. Okay, it has been an abject disaster for the middle class and the people at the bottom end of the economic spectrum over the last 3 years, and even people towards the upper end. When you see your grocery bill and you're like me and you have 3 kids, it is devastating.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think I was very surprised when I saw this particular poll pull out housing costs and housing costs. And yeah, that was funny. I mean, any way you look at it, watching President Trump serve up McDonald's French fries, Michael, I mean, you have to crack up with that apron on. And yet, you know, Kamala and Tim Walz are trying to act like he's disrespecting workers. Where was the disrespect? Everybody was like cheering him on yesterday.
So a few things, Maria. Donald Trump eats McDonald's all the time.
Yeah.
Like he's worried about his food being poisoned, so he eats a lot of fast foods. And just a quick quote from Andy Warhol. I've always thought the president could do so much here to help change images. If the president would go into a public bathroom in the Capitol and have the TV cameras film him clean the toilet and say, why not? Somebody's got to do it. It would do so much to help the morale of the people doing the wonderful job keeping toilets clean. 1 in 8 Americans has worked at a McDonald's. Okay, Donald Trump is in there having the time of his life, cracking jokes. This is a huge win for Trump and just further marries him to the working class people of this country.
Yeah, and I think the op-ed that Cheryl noted is important because, you know, they write the fast food aficionado missed a bigger opportunity to highlight how Kamala Harris's agenda endangers such jobs and franchise restaurants.
Maria, the left wants the entire country to be California, right? And it's like Kamala Harris didn't fail at her job as borders are. Alejandro Mayorkas didn't fail at his job. This is exactly what they were supposed to do, was to import new voters, cheap labor, so that they could replace the current ones who are here and have a one-party state rule. Okay, these byproducts of it are afterthoughts to them, if they're even consideration in their quest for power and to be completely unaccountable. So we have no idea how many people of illegal status are in this country. We were told during the Bush administration, when he came into office, there was 10 million. Okay, that was 2001, 2002. Somehow we kept with that all the way until 2020, and now there's roughly another 10 million that have come in since Joe Biden has been president. That number's probably north of 30 if we're just using basic math. Who are all these people? I'm sure the bulk of them are just here working hard, trying to build a life for their family. But inside of that, like, who knows what can happen? And, you know, the question you asked President Trump that the mainstream media completely distorted, what if there's some terrorists in there? What if there are just some awful people here who are here to do the country a tremendous amount of harm? Who knows how many terrorists they've actually apprehended at the border and how many have gotten away? It's terrifying when you think about the scope and the scale of what's happened to our country.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Cheryl, your reaction?
You got to.
Welcome back. It's time now for the Word on Wall Street. Top investors watching your money. Joining me now is UBS financial advisor Ryan Lynch. Also with me is Mike Lee. Great to see you, Ryan. Thanks for joining the conversation.
Thank you for having me, Maria. I appreciate it.
Good to see you. I want to kick things off with you, Mike. With all these earnings coming at us, General Motors reporting a double beat, raising its full-year earnings guidance, announcing it remains on track to reach its 2024 electric vehicle production and profitability targets. GE also reporting a double beat. General Electric raised its 2024 profit forecast as well. They're talking about strong demand for aftermarket services from airlines that are relying on order planes to make up for aircraft shortages. Verizon, meanwhile, beat on earnings. It missed on revenue despite adding more wireless subscribers with promotional offers that bundle 5G with streaming services like Netflix. We're waiting on Boeing, Coca-Cola, Tesla tomorrow, followed by UPS and Southwest Airlines on Thursday. And then we look ahead to the bulk of big tech earnings next week. That's going to be a big one when you've got Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Meta, as well as Tesla coming out in the week ahead. Mike, your reaction to earnings so far?
Yeah, so far this has been a pretty good earnings season, especially from the banks, surprising to the upside with financials hitting absolute all-time new highs. Great numbers from General Motors that just came out just across the tape 20 minutes ago. But the big number, the big news for earnings this week will be Tesla tomorrow. How are earnings going to look from them? How is their margin going to look? This robo-taxi event, stock sold off pretty hard on that. Are we going to get any more news on that? Are we going to get any more news on a lower price vehicle? But more specifically for Tesla, it's going to be about what does China demand look like? What do their profit margins look like? Because if you look at the electric vehicle space, you know, Tesla was a bit of a standalone. All this competition has come in and their margins have slowly but surely trickled down. Are we going to see a rebound in profit margin for Tesla? I think we are. I think China demand has picked up. We just got very good news from them in terms of their sales were up 6% year over year in terms of auto deliveries, whereas the rest of the industry is looking at negative numbers on a holistic basis. So things are looking pretty good for Tesla. And then next week, we're going to get into the story that I love to talk about, I love to see, which is this artificial intelligence. What does this cloud growth look like? How, you know, what are we going to get? So we get Microsoft, Google, and Amazon next week, the three big behemoths in the cloud space. I can't imagine anything other than blockbuster numbers. What the street has taken issue with, and Meta reporting as well, is how much are they going to spend on capital expenditures? What is that going to look like, and how does the street react? And so we heard from Jensen Huang, you know, roughly 4 or 5 weeks ago, saying for every dollar a Google, a Microsoft, and Amazon spends on an NVIDIA GPU, they can turn around and rent it for 5. So there's wild profitability already. I don't know if these big companies have communicated that as well, because the market seems to not enjoy the amount of capital expenditures they're making on these AI investments. Is this the quarter where we turn the page on that and the market start looking at these things as positives, not negatives? So that's what I'll specifically be looking for them, looking for them. And then my favorite company, Palantir, reports on November 4th, which will be the Super Bowl of earnings for me.
For Palantir. So would you buy any of these stocks, the big tech names, Mike, before the earnings numbers, or wait?
Yes, look, I would be long all of them. Depending on your time horizon, like if you have more than a month. More than a month, yes, I would be buying all of them. If you have a multi-year time horizon, absolutely. But one trade that's been extraordinarily effective is when these companies come out with spectacular earnings, yet the stock sells off. So Facebook or Meta, the stock was just at $420 a share. Now it's at $570, and that's all on capital expenditures, not missing financial metrics. So if we see good earnings and the stocks sell off, that's a buy all day, every day.
So you want to buy into any weakness. All right, Ryan, I want to ask you about that as well. But first, give us your, that would be inflation and immigration, the economy. But we've got 14 million ballots already cast in terms of all of this early voting. Every battleground state is in some form of early voting right now. Your thoughts on how important this one issue weighs?
You know, for Michigan, I think it's huge. You know, the electronic vehicles use a fraction of the amount of labor. They use a fraction of the amount of parts. Okay, it's the entire supply chain that fuels this Michigan economy and is essential for the U.S. economy and U.S. manufacturing. And forcing people into electronic vehicles has not only lost these critical companies to U.S. manufacturing tens of billions of dollars, okay, it laid off people like we just saw in the CNN video. It is an unmitigated disaster, and I think could be the key issue in Michigan.
Yeah. All right. We will take a short break and come. That is true that the automobile unions are supporting Kamala. I don't have any evidence of that. But what he just said there is something we should be hearing from Kamala Harris. And we haven't heard any articulate, any communication about what she wants to do, Mike. That's another problem.
Maria, the policies of this administration have destroyed the value of our currency. Okay, plain and simple. And that affects the working class more than any other segment in the country. You know, prior to this administration, it was said that half of Americans don't have $500 or $1,000 for an emergency. That number is approaching 70% now. It's devastating for people to live with that hanging over their head. And so people who are not part of this political process, people who don't pay attention to politics, people who may have voted for Trump in 2016, got tired of all the headlines, were unhappy about COVID, voted for Joe Biden in 2020. Now, if they're not part of it, but they're changing their mind because of the lived experience of this administration and what it has done to them.
Yeah, and that means everybody. I mean, everyone's feeling that. Doesn't mean just black voters, Hispanic voters, but certainly they are also feeling what you're saying.